The ultimatum arrived without drama, which made it worse. Commander Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of the UTS Resolute, watching the Galactic Council transmission render itself in cold geometric light above the command pit. No flourish. No warning. Just a declaration delivered with the confidence of an institution that had never been defied, and never expected to be. High Arbiter XY Thales' image solidified, tall, crystalline eyes unblinking, ceremonial markings glowing faintly along elongated cheek ridges. By unanimous decree of the Galactic Council, XY Thales intoned, the Sol system is hereby placed under comprehensive sanctions. All trade corridors sealed. All technological exchange suspended. All military movement restricted beyond your heliopause. Rourke folded his hands behind his back. Around him, officers stayed silent, faces tight. You are ordered, the Arbiter continued, to deactivate and dismantle the anomaly beneath your southern polar region. Compliance will restore limited status. Defiance will result in correction. The transmission ended. No threats. No raised voice. Just certainty. Rourke exhaled slowly. Well, he said, voice calm, that was polite. Lieutenant Hannah Ivers didn't look up from her console. Jump gate telemetry just went dark, sir. All council relays are cutting us off. Medical imports? Rourke asked. Frozen. Food convoys? Rerouted. The silence that followed was heavier than the void outside the viewport. Humanity had prepared for war, pandemics, climate collapse. It had not prepared to be quietly strangled by bureaucracy older than its recorded history. Rourke tapped his wrist. Patch me through to Terran command. The hologram shifted, resolving into the scarred face of Admiral Kincaid. You saw it? Yes, sir. They want the structure gone. Rourke glanced at the secondary display, where Antarctica rotated slowly beneath layers of sensor data. A vast geometric mass lay buried beneath kilometers of ice, unmoving, inert, ancient beyond comprehension. No, Rourke said. They want it silent. Kincaid's jaw tightened. Council law forbids interaction with Precursor-class artifacts. They say it destabilizes regions. They don't know what it is, Rourke replied. They don't care what it is. That was the difference. Humanity never had the luxury of not caring. 3 hours later, Rourke stood inside Polar Research Complex Theta, boots echoing against steel corridors reinforced long before Sanctions made such precautions necessary. Scientists moved with controlled urgency, datapads flashing, voices low. Dr. Mira Calder met him at the main observation deck. She looked exhausted, dark circles under sharp eyes, but alive with the kind of focus that came from standing on the edge of something vast. It reacted, she said without preamble. To the sanctions? Rourke asked. To the fleet mobilization, Calder corrected. She gestured toward the reinforced viewport. Below them, the ice had receded, melted not by heat but by precision. The structure was visible now, an impossible lattice of dark metal and lightless surfaces, edges folding in on themselves. It didn't look built. It looked resolved, as if reality had agreed to let it exist. When the Council fleets powered up outside Sol, Calder continued, the structure emitted a signal. Rourke felt a chill. A weapon? No, she shook her head. A response. To what? Calder hesitated. Something that isn't here. The Council-sanctioned fleet crossed the heliopause 12 hours later. They came in formation, immaculate and ceremonial, hulls adorned with sigils of authority older than Earth's first cities. They did not power weapons. They didn't need to. Council vessels broadcasting, Ivers reported from the Resolute's bridge. They're reciting statute. Rourke almost smiled. Of course they are. The message repeated across all channels, translated into every human language. Compliance ensures preservation. Resistance invites erasure. Sir, Ivers said quietly, long-range sensors are picking up fluctuations from the Antarctic site. Rourke turned. Define fluctuations. Gravitational lensing. Localized. Precise. Below them, far beyond sight, the structure stirred. Not moved, awakened. Ancient seams illuminated, lines of light threading through the lattice like veins remembering blood. The signal pulsed again, stronger this time, not outward but inward, folding space in on itself. Calder's voice cut in over comms, sharp with awe and fear. "Commander, this isn't a beacon." Rourke stared at the data cascading across his console. "Then what is it?" "A lock," she whispered. High Arbiter XY Thaley watched Sol Space with mounting irritation. Human signals filled the void, chaotic, inefficient, emotionally charged. Predictable. The Sanctions would break them. They always did. Then the long-range monitors spiked. "What is that emission?" XY Thaley demanded. The attending analysts froze. "It predates Council records, Arbiter." "That is impossible." "Nevertheless," another voice said, trembling, "it matches forbidden spectral patterns." XY Thaley's mandibles tightened. Those patterns were myths. Warnings used to frighten developing species. The void rippled. Not exploded. Rippled. As if something vast had shifted its attention. Back on the Resolute, every alarm activated at once. Rourke didn't flinch. Status. "Unknown energy signature beyond Sol's boundary," Ivers said. "It's not entering normal space." Calder's voice broke through again. "Commander, the structure is escalating containment protocols." Rourke closed his eyes for half a second. "So," he said, opening them, "the Council tried to silence the alarm." The structure pulsed a third time. Far beyond human instruments, something ancient and patient began to stir, drawn not by curiosity, but by opportunity. Rourke straightened, voice steady as the bridge shook beneath forces no one yet understood. "All stations," he ordered, "prepare for full isolation." Outside, the stars seemed to dim. And the silence the Council had imposed was about to answer back. The first breach did not tear space apart. It unfolded it. Commander Elias Rourke watched the tactical display as the distortion formed beyond Pluto's orbit, a dark curvature bending starlight inward. No explosion, no flash, just absence, as though a piece of the universe had quietly stepped aside. "Confirm readings," Rourke said. Lieutenant Ivers swallowed. "All instruments agree, sir. That region isn't empty. It's displaced." Dr. Mira Calder's voice came through, clipped and urgent. "Commander, the Antarctic structure just translated a data burst. It's not a warning. It's a record." Rourke leaned closer to the console. "Of what?" "Of failure." Deep beneath the ice, projectors older than Earth's biosphere activated in sequence. Holographic constructs filled the research chamber, towering figures composed of shifting light, their forms elegant and alien yet unmistakably weary. Calder stood frozen as the message resolved. "We were not gods," the translation began. "We were custodians." The figures moved, not dramatically, but with the weight of beings recounting regret. They spoke of a time before the Council, before known civilizations, when reality itself had been thinner. Something had discovered that weakness, not a species, not a mind in any human sense, but a pressure from beyond dimensions that fed on structured existence. "It does not conquer," the record continued. "It erases." The Precursors had fought it. They had failed. Victory had not been possible, only containment. Entire stars sacrificed to anchor the prison. Whole regions of space sealed and declared forbidden. The hologram dimmed. Calder exhaled shakily. The Council's exclusion zones, they weren't arbitrary. "No," Rourke said quietly from orbit. "They were graves." The second breach manifested closer. Council sensor platforms were the first to register it. Their analysts panicked, protocols colliding with instinct. Ships broke formation. High Arbiter XY Thaley stood rigid on the command dais as the reports flooded in. "Impossible," XY Thaley hissed. "That entity was sealed beyond causality. A subordinate dared to speak. Arbiter, the sole structure appears to be a containment node. Silence followed. You are saying, XY Thales said slowly, that the humans were maintaining an ancient defense without understanding it. Yes. XY Thales' gaze hardened. Then their ignorance is a threat. As if summoned by the declaration, the distortion surged. One council cruiser vanished. No explosion. No debris. One moment it existed, the next, its mass, energy, and signature were simply gone. The space it had occupied folded neatly closed. Fear rippled through the fleet. Fire containment lances. XY Thales ordered. The weapons struck the distortion and passed through, their energy unraveling into meaningless static. On the Resolute, alarms escalated to a new pitch. Council vessel lost, Ivers reported, voice tight. No residual matter. Rourke didn't look away from the display. They finally see it. Calder's channel crackled. Commander, the structure is compensating. It's rerouting power from the polar lattice. To do what? Rourke asked. To reinforce the prison. And if it can't? Calder hesitated. Then it delays the inevitable. A tremor passed through the ship, not physical, but perceptual. Crew members staggered as if gravity had momentarily forgotten them. What was that? Someone shouted. Rourke steadied himself. Everyone stay focused. The breach expanded. Within it, something moved, not entering space, but pressing against it. The sensors couldn't resolve a shape, only a gradient of negation where natural laws end. This thing isn't attacking, Ivers said, disbelief creeping in. It's testing. Rourke nodded. Like a hand on glass. The Council fleet broke. Some ships attempted retreat. Others fired blindly. Formation dissolved into panic. XY Thales watched centuries of certainty collapse in minutes. Transmit to Earth, XY Thales said, voice strained. Immediate channel. The link opened. Rourke appeared, calm amid chaos. Commander Rourke, XY Thales said, abandoning formality, you will deactivate the structure at once. Its activity is drawing the entity closer. Rourke's eyes hardened. With respect, Arbiter, you've misunderstood the situation. This is not a debate. No, Rourke agreed. It's a lesson. Another council ship vanished. XY Thales faltered. What is that thing? Rourke answered honestly. The reason the galaxy still exists. Silence stretched between them, broken only by distant alarms. You sanctioned us, Rourke continued, for refusing to turn off a lock you were too afraid to examine. XY Thales' voice dropped to a whisper. Can it be destroyed? Rourke shook his head. No. Only held. And for how long? Rourke glanced at the data scrolling beside him. As long as we keep paying the cost. On Earth, the structure flared brighter, draining power from every available grid. Cities dimmed. Satellites went dark. Humanity felt the strain not as fear, but as resolve. Calder stood before the lattice controls, hands steady despite the weight of extinction pressing in from the void. It's responding to us, she said softly. It recognizes intent. Rourke's voice came through one last time before the channels filled with static. Then tell it this, he said. We're not stepping aside. The breach shuddered. Something vast recoiled, not in pain, but in surprise. For the first time since it began waiting, the annihilation beyond space encountered resistance. And for the first time, the Galactic Council understood the depth of its mistake. The third breach tried to open inside Sol. Not at the edge. Not cautiously. It pressed inward with intent. Space twisted between Mars and Jupiter, stars smearing into elongated scars. Gravity spiked, then inverted. Civilian habitats screamed warnings as orbital mechanics buckled. Commander Elias Rourke felt it in his bones. All fleets, he ordered, voice sharp, anchor positions. No retreat vectors. If it reaches full emergence here, there won't be anywhere left to run. Around him, Terran ships maneuvered with disciplined precision. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and fully aware that none of their weapons could kill what approached. Yet no one broke formation. On Earth, power grids failed in cascading waves. Cities dimmed to emergency light. Still, the Antarctic structure burned brighter than ever, drawing energy through conduits never meant to exist. Dr. Mira Calder stood at its heart, surrounded by machinery that ignored modern physics. The Precursor interface no longer resisted her touch. It adapted. It's opening deeper layers, she said into the comm, breath steady despite the strain. Failsafes nested inside failsafes. They expected this moment. Rourke nodded. Then they expected someone to be here. They expected someone to choose, Calder replied. The Council fleet was in ruins. What remained drifted in fractured formations, crews shaken, doctrines shattered. High Arbiter HFY Sci-Fi stood amid emergency lighting, ceremonial authority stripped bare by reality. Another report arrived. Another loss narrowly avoided. HFY Sci-Fi activated the Terran channel again. Commander Rourke, the Arbiter said, voice unsteady but clear, the Council submits tactical authority to Earth. The bridge fell silent. Rourke regarded the Arbiter for a long moment. Submission noted. A bitter pause followed. What do you need? HFY Sci-Fi asked. Everything you have, Rourke replied. Power. Holes. Lives willing to hold a line they don't understand. HFY Sci-Fi inclined their head. It will be done. Centuries of hierarchy dissolved in a single motion. The entity pressed harder. Within the breach, structure emerged, not shape, not form, but intention. Regions of space lost coherence. Light bent inward, then failed entirely. Probes disintegrated before registering impact. This thing is learning, Lieutenant Ivers said, hands flying across controls. It's adapting to containment geometry. Rourke exhaled slowly. So do we. He keyed an encrypted channel. Calder, can the structure be inverted? Silence followed, broken by distant thunder as Antarctic ice fractured. Yes, Calder answered. But it was never meant to be permanent. Meaning? It doesn't seal the entity away, she said. It binds it to a cost. Rourke understood instantly. Massachusetts energy. Time. And proximity, Calder added quietly. It needs an anchor inside the system. Rourke stared at the Sol display. Then we give it one. The plan spread through Terran command without hesitation. No speeches. No debate. Humanity had crossed its threshold the moment the Council chose fear over understanding. Terran vessels began repositioning, not to attack, but to shape space. Drives synchronized. Reactors aligned. Holes locked into gravitational lattices dictated by the Precursor algorithms Calder relayed in real time. Council ships followed, awkward but obedient. What are they doing? HFY Sci-Fi asked from their shattered flagship. Building a cage, Rourke replied. From themselves. The structure beneath Antarctica shifted, unfolding into configurations unseen since the Precursor extinction. Its light pierced cloud cover, the ice above vaporizing in controlled torrents. The breach shrieked, not audibly, but across every sensor band. The entity recoiled as the lattice snapped shut around it, binding its emergence to anchored mass and finite energy. Stars stabilized. Gravity normalized. For a moment, the universe held its breath. Then the cost arrived. Terran ships closest to the lattice began to fail. Hulls buckled. Reactors overloaded. Crews stayed at stations, hands steady, voices calm. One by one, vessels went dark, not erased, but drained, rendered inert, sacrificed to keep the prison intact. Rourke watched the casualty list grow, jaw tight, eyes dry. Commander, Ivers said softly, the structure is reaching capacity. Calder's voice cut in, strained but resolute. This is the limit. The entity is contained, but not destroyed. Rourke nodded. That's enough. When the lattice sealed fully, the breach collapsed inward, leaving behind a region of space that refused to behave. The exclusion zone was reborn, smaller, tighter, watched. The entity remained. Waiting again. Silence returned to Sol, heavy but intact. HFY Sci-Fi stood in the aftermath, surrounded by ruin and realization. You could have abandoned this system, the Arbiter said to Rourke. Saved yourselves. Rourke shook his head. Then it would have followed someone else. And now? HFY Sci-Fi asked. Now we stand watch. The council channels erupted with argument, panic, reformation. Authority fractured beyond repair. Earth, HFY Sci-Fi said quietly, will you claim dominion? Rourke glanced toward the pale blue dot rotating beneath him, scarred but unbroken. No. Then what will you claim? Responsibility. Months later, the council reconvened, smaller, humbler. Earth was no longer sanctioned. It was designated something unprecedented. Custodian species. Guardian of the Perseus exclusion zone. Human ships patrolled the boundary, not as conquerors, but as wardens. They studied what others feared. They maintained what others abandoned. Dr. Calder returned to Antarctica, now a place of reverence rather than secrecy. The structure slept, but listened. Rourke stood once more on the bridge of the Resolute, watching distant stars burn steadily. Humanity had not defeated the darkness. It had accepted the burden of holding it back. And the galaxy, at last, slept a little easier, knowing someone was willing to stand where annihilation waited, and refused to step aside. The galaxy did not exhale. Not yet. Humanity's victory, or stewardship, as Rourke preferred to call it, was not a celebration. It was a vigil. A reminder etched into every orbital sensor and every icy layer beneath Antarctica, the entity still existed. Waiting. Testing. Patient. Commander Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of UTS Resolute, now the flagship of a reorganized Terran fleet, gazing at the Perseus exclusion zone. Beyond it, stars warped under subtle distortions, anomalies that no alien council could fully explain. Humanity had bought time, but at a cost that would echo for generations. Lieutenant Hannah Ivers reported, voice clipped but steady, energy readings are stable. The lattice beneath Antarctica is maintaining maximum output. No signs of leakage. Stable is relative, Rourke muttered. It's holding back something older than governance or law. That's all we can hope for. Dr. Mira Calder joined him, eyes reflecting a pale blue glow from the viewport. It responded well, she said, almost to herself. Humans, adapting. The structure recognized it. Rourke glanced at her. You mean it trusted us? Calder hesitated. Not trust. Compliance. Purpose. We chose to act, not retreat. That mattered. Rourke allowed a rare moment of silence. Purpose. It had been the difference between annihilation and survival. Humanity's impulsive nature, the very trait the Council condemned, had become its greatest weapon. On Earth, news of the Council's defeat, or collapse, spread slowly. Not through triumphalist broadcasts, but through measured announcements, trade embargoes lifted, orbital patrols restructured, humanity now tasked with guarding an exclusion zone that extended beyond known space. At the Antarctic Research Hub, workers moved deliberately, not in haste. Dr. Calder walked among them, explaining the structure's capabilities without oversimplification. Scientists from dozens of nations monitor the lattice, a living collaboration born of necessity, tempered by caution. One junior researcher, wide-eyed and nervous, asked, Dr. Calder, what happens if it fails? Calder paused, studying the lattice's subtle pulses. It won't fail while we pay attention. That's all we can promise. Survival is never absolute, it's choice. The childlike question lingered. Rourke's voice came over the secure comm, and humanity chooses to hold the line. Not because we must, but because we can. The Council, fractured and humbled, convened in the aftermath. High Arbiter XY Thaley observed from a distance, aware that their authority had irrevocably diminished. A species they had dismissed, sanctioned, and underestimated now bore the mantle of cosmic responsibility. "You have done what we could not," XY Thaley said during a rare secure transmission to Rourke. "I had expected defiance. I did not anticipate understanding." Rourke's reply was deliberate. "Understanding isn't always benevolence. Sometimes it's endurance." "You carry the burden alone," the Arbiter said. "We do," Rourke confirmed. "But alone or not, we stand." The Council fell silent after that. Not out of respect, but because even they knew the conversation had ended. Humanity had assumed responsibility, no bureaucracy could reverse it. In orbit above Earth, the Terran fleet reconfigured into a permanent defense ring. Ships were stationed strategically, their drives synchronized to counter gravitational anomalies and dimensional instabilities. Training shifted from combat against other species to operational mastery of containment technologies, many adapted from the Precursor's designs. Rourke oversaw the operation personally, walking among officers and crew as they calibrated drives, energy grids, and sensor arrays. "We are not the strongest," he reminded them. "We are the vigilant. Every decision counts. Every error could be fatal. The galaxy learned this the hard way. We will not." Lieutenant Ivers approached, datapad in hand. "Sir, lattice integrity remains above 98%. Fluctuations minimal." Rourke nodded. "Good. Keep monitoring. That margin is our buffer." Meanwhile, on Earth, civilian life continued in a cautious normalcy. Humanity had glimpsed the universe's fragility and resilience. Children learned in schools about the exclusion zone not as myth, but as responsibility. Engineers, physicists, and soldiers alike were united by the knowledge that the cosmos' most ancient threats were no longer distant stories, they were real, and they required guardianship. Dr. Calder, walking among students and early career scientists, paused beside a young cadet. "Do you understand why we are here?" she asked. The cadet hesitated, then nodded. "To keep what shouldn't escape, contained." Calder smiled faintly. "Yes. And remember this, containment is not defeat. It's responsibility. That is what makes us human." Weeks passed, then months. The lattice beneath Antarctica pulsed with regularity, a silent heartbeat signaling humanity's constant vigilance. The Council, now relegated to advisory roles, sent emissaries cautiously, their tone respectful but tinged with lingering disbelief. Every transmission reminded them that Earth had not merely survived, it had become indispensable. Rourke often walked the polar facility at night, alone, listening to the faint hum of the lattice. Calder occasionally joined him. They spoke little, but their thoughts converged on the same truth: the universe had revealed itself, and humanity had responded, not with submission, but with resolve. One night, Calder finally broke the silence. "Do you ever think it's watching us?" Rourke looked to the lattice, shadows stretching across the ice. "It's always watching. But it's not waiting for fear. It's waiting for choice. And we have chosen." Calder nodded. "And if it tests us again?" "Then we stand again," Rourke said, voice firm. Humanity does not step aside. Far beyond Earth, in the darkened corners of space, the exclusion zone shimmered faintly. Stars twisted subtly, and reality itself seemed to breathe. The entity lingered, bound by forces only humans could fully comprehend. It had been delayed, not defeated. And perhaps, in some measure, it respected the species that had faced it. Rourke returned to the Resolute's bridge for the final observation of the night. Sensors pinged with quiet anomalies, reminders that vigilance must never falter. He looked toward the stars, then down at Earth, calm beneath him. Humanity had survived sanctions, galactic wrath, and an ancient horror. They had been tested, and they had endured. Not because they were strongest, not because they were invincible, but because they were willing to act when all others had fled. Rourke allowed a rare smile, faint but genuine. "We've earned the watch," he said softly. Ivers glanced at him. "In the galaxy? We'll sleep a little easier," he replied. "Because someone is finally paying attention." The lattice pulsed once more, steady and unwavering, beneath Antarctic ice. Humanity's vigilance had become permanent, a quiet defiance against annihilation. They had not conquered the entity. They had not claimed glory. They had claimed responsibility. And in the darkness beyond, the entity waited, knowing, finally, that Earth would not turn away. Humanity stood alone. And for the first time, that was enough.